let's set the scene. Picture this. On the left, you've got a grainy, late 90s photo, John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette, stepping out of a Manhattan apartment, all minimalism and flawless style. It's like you can almost hear the city noise, but the image itself, frozen, untouchable. Now on the right, there's a recent social media clip, Harry and Meghan smiling into a camera, and within hours, that moment's been dissected, memed, and spun in 1,000 directions. The contrast is, well, it's kind of wild. One image is locked in time, safe from any new drama. The other is alive, always shifting, always up for reinterpretation. And that's really what we're talking about today. Two cultural codes. There's the closed narrative where meaning is fixed, safe to idealize, and then there's the ongoing performance, where meaning is unstable, always up for renegotiation. Why does this matter? Well, these codes shape how we see reality, how we perform identity, and honestly, how we cope with the messiness of 2025. So stick with me. We're going to unpack why closed narratives feel safer, how they shape our media economy, and what all this says about our uneasy relationship with reality. So let's dig into this idea of posthumous relevance. The dead, they become what you might call perfected signs. Their story's done. No more plot twists, no more scandals. In semiotic terms, they're closed texts. Stable, predictable, endlessly reusable. And that's gold for the media industry. You can make documentaries, biopics, slap their face on a t-shirt. No risk of them suddenly doing something that derails the brand. Nostalgia, it's like a market in itself. You can repackage it for every new generation, and it just keeps selling. But the living? Whole different game. Their value is tied to constant updates, viral spikes, and, let's be honest, public scrutiny that can turn on a dime. Harry and Meghan, for example, every gesture, every interview, it's all up for reinterpretation overnight. High reward, sure, but the volatility? It's exhausting. And you see this with the Kennedys too. The living heirs, they're in this never-ending skirmish over what the family legacy even means. Every move is amplified, satirized, and, well, sometimes just torn apart. That's the hazard of being alive in the public eye. Meaning is always in motion, and you can't curate the future the way you can curate the past. Now let's talk about myth-making. Roland Barthes, the French cultural theorist, explained that myths work by stripping away all the complexity of history until what remains feels natural and inevitable. Death accelerates that process. Once someone is gone, the contradictions and awkward moments can be edited out. What is left is a distilled image, a sign that feels perfectly in place, as if it was always meant to be that way. In celebrity culture, death accelerates this. The living, they're stuck on what Irving Goffman called the front stage, always performing, always being watched. And over time, the cracks show. Mistakes, fatigue, contradictions, they all become part of the record. But the dead, they skip that stage. They're preserved in this eternal best moment loop. For Harry and Meghan, every attempt to refine their brand just brings more scrutiny. For JFK Jr. and Carolyn, there's no performance left to manage, so there's no fall from grace. Their mythic purity is maintained not by what they do, but by their absence. Here's where it gets a bit more emotional. A parasocial relationship is when you feel a personal connection to a public figure, even though the relationship exists entirely in your mind. With the dead, that connection feels safe. There is no risk they will say something that alienates you, become embroiled in a scandal, or simply fade from relevance over time. The dead can be embraced across political divides because they cannot speak in the present. As Barthes and Goffman help us see, their symbolic meaning is stable, stripped of contradictions, and free from the visible strain of ongoing performance. That stability deepens our attachment even when the connection exists entirely in our own imagination. And in these polarized times, the living, they're risky. They might challenge your worldview, force you to negotiate differences in real time. The dead? They let us retreat. It's not just nostalgia, it's a way to avoid the hard work of living with difference. But there is a darker edge to the comfort we find in closed narratives. Consider QAnon's fixation on JFK Jr. In some corners of that movement, people genuinely believe he never died, or that he will one day return to take on a secret political role. Why choose him? His cultural image is stable, locked in time, and immune from contradiction. He cannot challenge the fantasy because he no longer speaks in the present. That silence makes him a perfect canvas for projection, allowing followers to mold him into whatever symbol the movement requires. The same qualities that make him appealing in mainstream nostalgia, polished, untouchable, endlessly adaptable, also make him a potent tool for alternative realities. In this way, posthumous myth is not just harmless memory work, it can be actively weaponized. And that is precisely the quality that makes JFK Jr. so marketable in mainstream nostalgia. A closed narrative is predictable, easy to package, and free from the risks that come with a living subject. But that stability cuts both ways. It is not just a harmless vessel for style magazines, biopics, or commemorative retrospectives. It can also be rewritten, repurposed, and at times hijacked entirely for narratives far removed from the person's real life. When the subject cannot speak back, their image becomes a kind of cultural open source, available to anyone with a story to tell, whether that story is wistful nostalgia or a conspiratorial fantasy. It is not just the domain of fringe belief either. The same qualities that make a closed narrative irresistible for mainstream nostalgia, stability, immunity from contradiction, and openness to projection, also make it a powerful tool for constructing alternative realities. The backward gaze becomes more than a source of comfort. It can serve as a scaffold for collective delusion, providing a ready-made framework on which to hang whatever story the moment demands. Now to turn to the living and the machinery of memes. Take Meghan Markle's interviews as a case in point. On TikTok, clips are cut and looped to exaggerate her gestures and articulation, isolating each movement until it becomes a performance in itself. The framing suggests she is delivering vulnerability on cue, a calculated display rather than a spontaneous moment. Once the pattern is established, it spreads quickly, detached from its original context, and carried forward as shorthand for a certain kind of self-presentation. The logic of memes is unforgiving. They peel away the original context until all that remains is a caricature, a flattened symbol that can be lifted and dropped into any situation. In this stripped-down form, meaning is no longer anchored to the original moment. It's dictated by the hands that reuse it. The meme becomes the message, carrying its own shorthand and cultural weight, often far removed from the reality it came from. And here's the crucial point. This process mirrors posthumous myth-making, but for the living it unfolds in real time and, often, without their consent. Memes operate as a kind of cultural pushback, magnifying intention until it becomes impossible to ignore. By exaggerating every gesture or inflection, they puncture the illusion of authenticity and reveal the machinery of performance underneath. What emerges is not just mockery, but a commentary on how carefully curated images can collapse under the weight of their own design. For Harry and Meghan, the challenge is that their image is never complete. It remains in flux, constantly open to reinterpretation, reframing, and attack. They are caught in the messy middle, working to sustain a coherent narrative while still living it in public view. Every new move reshapes the story, inviting fresh waves of approval, criticism, or parody, and ensuring that their performance is always vulnerable to disruption. So, bringing it all together, the dead offer stability and adaptability. The living bring volatility and fatigue. That contrast is not only about them, it reflects our own discomfort with the present. We gravitate toward finished stories because they feel safe, but in doing so, we reveal how uneasy we are with the uncertainty and contradictions of reality as it unfolds. The more we invest in closed narratives, the less willing we become to engage with the messy work of living reality. Look at the Kennedy family's living figures, Jack Schlossberg and RFK Jr., where every move is contested, meaning shifts with each appearance, and the family legacy is actively fought over in real time. That is the living hazard, the constant risk of being redefined before the story is finished. So here's the open question. If we keep preferring the safety of finished stories over the uncertainty of the present, what happens to our ability to imagine a future that is not already scripted? That is something to chew on until next time. Thanks for listening to Analyzing Trends. See you all next time.